Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's 17th of April, which means that it's exactly 2 months since I began doing these videos for YouTube about books. And I've been doing them every single day since then, which might seem like, I hope it doesn't seem like overload to you. I'll probably start spacing them out and doing them every few days perhaps from now on. It just seemed like I needed to do a whole lot at once to get everything off my chest that I was thinking about. But I probably will slow down. I actually made one the other day and read out this whole chapter of one of my favorite books, and then realized my microphone wasn't working halfway through and it hadn't picked up. It's just awful. It's such a waste of time. Anyway, that was the first time I'd had a technical failure like that in this whole 2 months. So that's not too bad. I might read you a little bit of what I did read the other day. Apart from that, the blossom's out and we've had a bit of sun in Manchester. Mostly it's been pouring down again. I haven't been out much. I've been working on this novel of mine and I'm in the last third of this thing that's some kind of domestic thriller. I'm trying to figure out who goes where and what happens in the last third. Quite tricky. Um, and that's what is taking up my attention just now, as well as thinking about prints for this for these art sales coming up and cards and things of my artwork. What else? What else do I need to tell you? I've started thinking about my to be read mountain. I showed people in an early video just how many books are waiting in this house for me to read, and it's an obscene number of books. And I did wonder about um, uh, is it de-hoarding, uncluttering, whatever the word is that people use on BookTube. Um, Unhauling, such a strange word. Um, so I have thought of getting rid of some, and went through quite an interesting uh, process the other day, where some of these stacks are literally 70 or 80 books tall, wobbling away at the top of the stairs. um, and I thought, I wonder what it would be like just to pick out, say, a third, less than a third, 20 um, of a stack of 70. And I did this for 3 or 4 stacks. And it was interesting. Here are the essential books. Here's kind of a third of them. And I could do it. And I could imagine getting rid of the other however many. It's still theoretical at this stage. I guess, I mean, there's only so much time, isn't there? And you think about how many books you read in a year, and in recent years, that's meant about 100 for me. Um, and there's just no way of catching up. And sometimes you just have to let go of the things that you've hoarded, um, and to give yourself room to find new things, other things that you haven't even thought about yet. So we'll see. We've got the Jumble Trail coming up in Levenshulme on Sunday. We haven't done one for years. I think pre-COVID was the last time. And it's this brilliant thing where there's a map of the whole area. And the streets taking part are kind of filled in, and people put stalls outside their house and sell stuff. And usually it's a whole load of clothes, the usual jumble sales stuff, not so many books. And of course, we've had a little free library outside our house since the beginning of COVID as well. It's empty at the moment because of all the rain. And I did find doing the Jumble Trail that nobody buys books. It's a real shame. I love going out and buying books and going to secondhand bookshops, but I don't think as many people do. They expect to get these things for nothing now because of things like little free libraries. So I did think about just, help yourself. Here's a whole pile of books. Take them away. And that would be quite a good thing to do this Sunday. It'd be nice if it was a sunny day and I could sit there and sell some pictures and give away books. That would be quite fun. Although I could imagine dragging them back off people, chasing them down the street. We have to do the same thing with DVDs and Blu-rays as well. We've made a decision to see if we stick to it, to confine those discs to maybe one bookcase in the dining room, so we get our dresser back, so we can have crockery out and nice things, rather than just heaps and heaps of um, DVDs that we don't really watch so much. There's only certain ones that we rewatch. It's funny, you get used to seeing things on the shelf and stop seeing them, stop using them. I like that thing that I think Jesse the Reader said on his channel about these things aren't trophies on your shelf. You either use them or you stop seeing them. They're not just there to show off. You know, I read this, I watched this, and I can really see that. But at the same time, I was uh, a lecturer with an office, and having those books to hand was always useful, was always important. Um, so we'll see. Oh, there's Jeremy going past, trying to get into the video again. Um, anyway, I'm going to read this little bit of The Neverending Story, less than I read on my video that went wrong the other day. This is from chapter 1, where our hero, Bastian Balthazar Books, bursts into a shop that he's never been to before, and it turns out it's a bookshop, a dusty old bookshop, and there's a not very friendly little old man sitting at the counter who doesn't want him in the shop because kids are horrible in bookshops, apparently, according to Mr. Coriander, who runs the shop. And they get into a conversation, but then Mr. Coriander's called away by a phone call. And this is the beginning of everything in Michael Ender's The Neverending Story. At that moment, the telephone rang. With some difficulty, Mr. Coriander pulled himself out of his armchair and shuffled into a small room behind the shop. Oh, this is my fancy edition where half the pages are in red ink and half the pages are in green ink for reasons that will become apparent when you read the rest of the book. I've lost my place. He picked up the receiver and indistinctly Bastian heard him saying his name. After that, there was nothing to be heard but a low mumbling. Bastian stood there. He didn't quite know why he had said all he had said and admitted so much. He hated being questioned like that. He broke into a sweat as it occurred to him that he was already late for school. He'd have to hurry. Oh yes, he'd have to run, but he just stood there, unable to move. Something held him fast. He didn't know what. He could hear the muffled voice from the back room. It was a long telephone conversation. It came to Bastian that he had been staring the whole time at the book that Mr. Coriander had been holding, and that was now lying on the armchair. He couldn't take his eyes off it. It seemed to have a kind of magnetic power that attracted him irresistibly. He went over to the chair, slowly held out his hand and touched the book. In that moment, something inside him went click, as though a trap had shut. Bastian had a vague feeling that touching the book had started something irrevocable, which would now take its course. He picked up the book and examined it from all sides. It was bound in copper-coloured silk that shimmered when he moved it about. Leafing through the pages, he saw the book was printed in 2 colours. There seemed to be no pictures, but there were large, beautiful capital letters at the beginning of the chapters. Examining the binding more closely, he discovered 2 snakes on it, one light and one dark. They were biting each other's tails, so forming an oval, and inside the oval, in strangely intricate letters, he saw the title, The Never-Ending Story. Human passions have mysterious ways in children as in grown-ups. Those affected by them can't explain them, and those who haven't known them have no understanding of them at all. Some people risk their lives to conquer a mountain peak. No one, not even they themselves, can really express why. Others ruin themselves trying to win the heart of a certain person who wants nothing to do with them. Still others are destroyed by their devotion to the pleasures of the table. Some are so bent on winning a game of chance that they lose everything they own, and some sacrifice everything for a dream that can never come true. Some think their only hope of happiness lies in being somewhere else, and spend their whole lives travelling from place to place, and some find no rest until they've become powerful. In short, there are as many different passions as there are people. Bastian Balthazar Bux's passion was books. If you have never spent whole afternoons with burning ears and rumpled hair, forgetting the world around you over a book, forgetting cold and hunger, if you have never read secretly under the bedclothes with a flashlight because your father or mother or some other well-meaning person had switched off the lamp on the plausible ground that it was time to sleep because you had to get up early, if you have never wept bitter tears because a wonderful story has come to an end, and you must take your leave of the characters with whom you have shared so many adventures, whom you have loved and admired, for whom you have hoped and feared, and without whose company life seems empty and meaningless. If such things have not been part of your own experience, you probably won't understand what Bastian did next. Staring at the title of the book, he turned hot and cold, cold and hot. Here was just what he had dreamed of, when he had longed for ever since the passion for books had taken hold of him. A story that never ended, the book of books. He had to have this book, at any price. At any price. That was easily said. Even if he had had more to offer than the bit of pocket money he had on him, this cranky Mr. Coriander had given him clearly to understand that he would never sell him a single book. And he certainly wouldn't give it away. The situation was hopeless. Yet Bastian knew he couldn't leave without the book. It was clear to him. He had only come into the shop because of this book. It had called to him in some mysterious way, because it wanted to be his, because it had somehow always belonged to him. Bastian listened to the mumbling from the little back room. In a twinkling, before he knew it, he had the book under his coat and was hugging it with both arms. Without a sound, he backed up to the street door, keeping an anxious eye on the other door, the one leading to the back room. Cautiously, he turned the door handle. To keep the brass bells from ringing, he opened the glass door just wide enough for him to slip through. He quietly closed the door behind him. Only then did he start running. The books, copybooks, pens and pencils in his satchel jiggled and rattled to the rhythm of his steps. He had a stitch in his side, but he kept on running. The rain ran down his face and into his collar. The wet cold passed through his coat, but Bastian didn't feel it. He felt hot all over, but not from running. His conscience, which hadn't let out a peep in the bookshop, had suddenly woken up. All the arguments that had seemed so convincing melting away like snowmen under the fiery breath of a dragon. He had stolen. He was a thief. What he had done was worse than common theft. That book was certainly the only one of its kind, and impossible to replace. It was surely Mr. Coriander's greatest treasure. Stealing a violinist's precious violin or a king's crown wasn't at all the same as filching money from a cash drawer. As he ran, he hugged the book tighter under his coat. Regardless of what this book might cost him, he couldn't bear to leave it. It was all he had left in the world. Because naturally, he couldn't go home anymore. It's one of my favourites. I didn't read it until, I don't know when it was, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I always knew the film. The book is one of those, like The Princess Bride by William Goldman, that gets bigger when you read it. It gets more complicated as you read it. It seems simple on the outside, but is endlessly complex inside. It's always one of my favorite things, those things that seem simple and easy on the outside, or seem daft or stupid on the outside, but are much more complex and serious once you get into them. I'd far rather that than something that seems serious and complex on the outside, but is daft and trivial when you get into it, which is often the way, isn't it? Those things that are earnest and serious seeming are often much more facile upon examination. Anyway, that's the beginning of the Neverending Story. I'm going to go now and get on with the rest of my day and think about plotting and the terrible things that I'm going to have happen to my poor characters. Um, and take a walk about in blossomy Levenshulme. There's all cherry blossom outside on the tree in my garden out there, and it makes the whole place seem very inviting for walking about in. You can see the reflection of it actually in the cupboard behind me, moving about, and it looks like snow. Okay, thank you all for watching and leaving all your many comments. It's this lovely conversation going in text around these videos. I'm amazed that so many people are watching every day, and hope you keep on tuning in. As I keep saying, I must be near about 1,000 followers now, which seems incredible, really. And I'm very glad and very grateful for that. Okay, all the best to you, and talk again soon, and tune again to the next episode.